Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info, and I know we've said this probably a few shows in a row now, Scott, but some stuff happened. Just a few things in very, very recent history that may be of interest to a few people in the Transformers TCG fandom. Just a little bit. A little bit.
If you're listening to this, I would hope so, yeah.
Yes, exactly. That I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you probably know what we're talking about, but I'm going to dance around it for a little bit and get into it a little later on. Or, you know what? What the hell? Shout out to Vector Sigma teammate Dan Arnold for being our world champion. Congratulations. It was a very well-deserved win. I'm going to give you another shout out in a little while when we get to that section, but I got excited. I couldn't contain myself.
Fair.
As you can tell by my slight cough, it's recovering from the con, and I can see a few people in chat were talking about that they're a little beat up. Are you feeling okay after PAX Unplugged, Scott?
I was really tired yesterday. I was pretty tired this morning at work. But I think like right this moment I'm okay, but I was pretty tired today earlier.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, getting back to work was it was very much that weird, like, you're coming out of a dream state sort of thing, where it's like you had this surreal experience at the Energon Invitational. It was a lot of fun, met a lot of people, and we're going to get into that in a little while. And then it's like, at least for me, bang, right back into the real world. And I'm sure a lot of other people had that same experience as well, where it's snapped back to reality. And, well, Christmas is around the corner, so it's getting all that stuff ready, and end of the year, and it very much ripped me right out of that fun, warm fuzzy.
I mean, I saw a meme today that showed that, like, what is it, like, this week and last week are like you fake doing work. Next week you just totally just give up on even attempting to do any work or whatever. Yeah.
Believe me, there are a few people I know that are following that exact plan. Unfortunately, I don't have that luxury because I got some year-end stuff I got to get done. But that's another story. Anyway, so before we get into talking about the main event, there is or are a few other events that we wanted to give a quick shout out to. By the time you're hearing this, if you're not watching it live, one of them will have already happened, but the other one is coming up at the end of January, and that is, of course, the Pro Play Tour. So they already had the event in Dallas. That definitely informed some of the things going into the Energon Invitational. Now that the Energon Invitational has happened, obviously that's going to inform these other two events. I'm very interested in seeing how they shake out. I wish I could be attending them. I definitely can't make this weekend. Trying to see what can be done for January, personally.
Yeah, same.
Do you think you're making a trip out there, Scott, to either of these?
Not to Vegas this weekend. I'm gonna do my best to go to Orlando, but there might be some work travel stuff that might get in the way. So
right.
I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah,
it's a pretty cheap ticket from here.
Yeah, we were looking it up. Even as a last minute thing, it's entirely possible to make it there pretty frugally. But it's still obviously short notice for, I think, most people, if you haven't already decided. But there's clearly a plethora of information as a result of the Energon Invitational to define what's going in. So you at least don't have an excuse on the front of, well, what is the meta? What is there to play? What's out there?
No, and the best part is that you can now order a kit to have a qualifier in your local store.
Yes, that was actually, was that announced on Friday? It was relatively recently.
No, it was this week.
Oh, it was this week. Yeah, I saw that go up on Twitter, and I was very excited by that because it's really cool to, again, get that in-store support, give people something to play for, again, just like the EI qualifier season.
Yeah, I think it's actually like, I wish I would have known it. I mean, I'll talk to PPG about maybe, doing it a little bit early next time because it's something that might just take time. Like, we had to find a date that was going to be convenient for us to be able to host one of the events.
Of course.
But it's really cool because you get 2 slots. I mean, honestly, the kit's kind of irrelevant, like the swag that comes in the kit. But like,
that's a sweet lanyard, though.
Yeah, but you do get.
I
You do
joke,
get
but
two
like
fun-
it is cool that they do have something in there. It's not just,
Yeah.
hey, here's two like dollar store raffle tickets. Those are your tickets to get into the event. Like there's some stuff in there.
No, and the coolest part for me personally is like, so like my full intention, assuming I can go, was to LCQ for the event.
Mm.
Because they're running them I think every hour, very similar to the LCQs that were at the Energon Invitational. I think they're going to be E-Man pods, and then the person that wins the pod wins the invitation to Sunday.
Mm.
So the fact that you can run one in your home store, assuming you win it, means that you can go to a very touristy area for a tourist type, time while you're there.
Right.
And you don't have to feel like you have to. Because my intention was to go Friday, hopefully Q, and then not have to go Saturday, take Saturday off.
Yeah.
And then
Well, because the whole event, the main event, is self-contained on Sunday.
Right. So it was going to be like, hopefully Q on Friday, and then take Saturday off, and then go back on Sunday. But if I'm queued ahead of time, there'll be no rush to even do that. So
Exactly.
I think it's just a great idea. Like I said, you have a month to take care of it. Hopefully this sets a precedent.
I mean, do you though? So. Just given the specific month, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, they're due back. I think sometime like the 13th or something like that of January. So
okay, then you have a few weeks at least. Like there's some windows.
Yeah, it's just that I don't know what's going on in other TCGs, like specifically like Magic over the next month. So I'm not really sure like how busy the schedule is for that. So I assume it's relatively open given the season, but. Hopefully, if you want to host one, you can find time with your store to schedule something. As long as you get, I think, 4 to 8 players, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, going forward, I don't know what the exact plan is on the PPG side is at this stage. I don't think they've said anything publicly as far as how this will look, in March, after or sometime after the championship. Are we immediately going to get these store kits? Is it going to be the store kits will be the quote unquote LCQs? Outside of the main event, like in the end of 2020. I'm curious to see how that shakes out because there are a lot of benefits to getting butts into the stores kind of thing, as well as at all of the destination events.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to them more at length, just because I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know Wizards is pretty happy with the turnout that's happened for the first few major events. Is looking at them as strong levels of competition for that level of event, and
absolutely.
I know that they're taking like February off as a month to take off, but that they'll announce more.
PPG, you mean?
Yeah. They'll announce more monthly starting in March. But yeah, if you watch our interview with Drew, which is now live at the time of this recording, we kind of expressed our concerns about there being a long layoff and the fact
absolutely.
that players quote want to play for something. I just think that the main event always being somewhere in the South Florida area, I assume it'll always be in either the Orlando or Miami area because PBG is based out of Miami, and Orlando is a very a relatively cheap destination to have events like this because of how they shape out.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that given that, I think it's a great way for anybody from around the country. It's a true destination for a lot of people. So, there's a huge incentive for people to want to go to that. So I think that if we were to put these kits in the hands of players early in the next season, which I think is like season 3 of PBG, but season 2 of Transformers PBG, it might fill that gap that may or may not exist. I don't want us to be out of turn for what may occur in the 2020 season, but
exactly,
because that's all still being worked out. I know that for a fact, and there'll hopefully be more to come soon. So in case there is any kind of lull like that, at least you can have an event, a more major local event for your store that would lead to something else.
Exactly. I mean, for me personally, I'm of the opinion that more is better. So even if there is not a lull, it gives you multiple opportunities of, like we were just talking about, real life gets in the way sometimes. Well, okay, you can hit it up next weekend at whether it's a PPG event, it's an official WotC event, it's whatever. It gives you more chances to sling Transformers cards at a high level of competition, which is at least that's the important part for me, that it's like I'm going and it's the fun is the challenge. The fun is sitting down against people that know what they're doing and that are prepared and put in the effort and really testing your wits and skills. That's not to say that it's not fun to, play random stuff every once in a blue moon, but for me, it really is going to these big events, going to these long events, enjoying the atmosphere of those sort of things.
I agree. And the one thing I'll say, and we will definitely get into this later, but I guess it's a little unfortunate that it seems like a lot of these larger events seem to be back to back. Like, for example, PAX South is going to be a week before the PPG Tour Orlando.
Yeah.
Vegas is a week after Energon Invitational. I think what this basically shows you, and it's something that we'll definitely get into later, is that we as a Transformers TCG community need to grow the game to an extent, need to grow the competitive level of the game to these types, to host these types of events, either on their own as not tied to other TCGs that are more of your breadwinners, or
just other general events that may be totally
Right.
unrelated.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's fine to be at and like have a presence or even a major event at PAX South, but let's face it, the outside of PAX Unplugged, the PAX events are primarily video game focused, and I do love my video games, but it would be nice to have a Grand Prix or whatever they want to call it for Transformers.
It just makes it difficult. I just think that, like, as a community as a whole, to have, I'm perfectly fine with having one major event every month, but having them back-to-back weeks just becomes difficult. And I understand logistics were planned well ahead of time.
Oh, of course.
And like we said, it's the breadwinner type mentality, but and we can get into that later. But
oh yeah,
it's just unfortunate because it's just very difficult to be able to go to some of these things back to back.
Absolutely, and again, it's the real life logistics of trying to do these things. It, like I said, I do appreciate that there are so many. They can step on each other's toes to some extent. Like you said, if they're back to back in that fashion, not everybody can do the grinder thing of just play an event, come home, turn around, jump on another plane like a day later, 2 days later, and fly across the country to somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's understood. I think that's being factored into what makes these events a success. So I think it's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. At the end of the day, there's clearly an interest. There's clearly people that are involved and willing to travel, willing to play at this level. So let's just keep feeding it.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on Pro Play Tour Season 2, the championship coming up, Vegas, predictions about what you think is going to take it based on this past weekend?
Way too early for that.
Fair.
I don't even know who's going. So
okay, that's completely understandable. So we'll, I guess we can kind of roll into the main event, which is kind of what everybody should have been expecting, and that's because the guy on your screen right now, Dan Arnold, again, congratulations, our Energon Invitational champion, took the whole thing down. You can see him there with that awesome looking trophy. I don't think I pulled down the picture with all the other swag that he got, but there was a giant toy I'm a little jealous of, and a bunch of other stuff.
Which wasn't that heavy. I carried it to the car. It actually wasn't that heavy.
Well, I mean, it's relatively hollow plastic at the end of the day. So yeah, first off, congratulations to Dan. Congratulations to everybody else who top 8'd. I kind of wanted to start out with shout outs, Scott. I know the old traditional, way back early Magic, it would be props and slops all the way at the end of a tournament report. But is there anything or anyone you wanted to call out before we really get into stuff? Just quick shout outs.
Shout out to Pastime and the WotC staff for running a very positive, very good event. And we can get into this later.
Yep.
But these events are never easy to put on. These events cost money to run at a major convention like this. And especially in a game that's so new. I think they did an admirable job of getting, the pairings up there and getting everybody in their seats. And basically, when you really needed somebody, eventually they came by. When you had an issue, you could always, I could always appeal to John and his staff. So it really wasn't a big deal for me. I thought the stream coverage was really good on Sunday. Shout out to Matt.
For a second, I thought you were going to go, shout out to Scott Landis. He did a great job on the mic.
No, shout out to Matt Smith of WotC for organizing all that, as well as I just being somebody on the inside of a game that is able to see it from the competitor standpoint. I think it was really cool. I haven't interacted with people from the company on that level, I think probably ever, where like somebody that's in that kind of position really has a beat on what they feel is going to do well in competitive scene and like understand that aspect of it, especially on a game so new.
Right.
To Drew for letting, always being at the forefront of the community. And I saw him do interviews, but I feel like ours at this point with him are just extremely conversational.
Yeah, it definitely has gotten to that point, not to break your train of thought, but the reality is when the first time we interviewed him actually at PAX last year, understandably we had some technical difficulties, but it's also a little stilted just because it's understanding what the relationship is, where we can take certain conversations, how to, just interact with a new person. So I agree that it's gotten to the point where I feel much more comfortable speaking with whether it's Drew, Matt, or any other members of the WotC team, which is really cool.
Yeah. In terms of players, we can get into that later. In terms of some of the six, but I would just say, shout out to Dan and the team and to really everybody involved. I think it was just a very fun, very positive event all around. What really impresses me, honestly, is the competitive level of the event.
Yeah.
How do I say it? The cream truly rose to the top of this event, and sometimes skimmed just beneath the surface.
Well, when you have this quantity of strong players, like sometimes that's going to happen.
Well, I mean, you didn't have to bring your A game; you had to bring your A+ game because, and again, we can get into this later, but people that might have had a good event just didn't wind up where they expected themselves to be based on competition they've had in other.
Well, I think it definitely, when you have, again, it was 162 was the final count, I want to say.
Oh, I thought it was 158, so that's good with me. Yeah,
I thought it was in the 160s, but somewhere around there, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
You have that quantity of players. Obviously, everybody earned their invite, whether it was from Gen Con, it was Origins, it was stores, whatever. And some of the store events were pretty large themselves. Like you said, people showing up, this was going to be the best players in the world. You had to really fight the gauntlet. No given round was going to be a gimme. That's why earning and fighting your way through that humongous threatening gauntlet from round one into Sunday is so impressive, and why the mental stability and endurance of each of the competitors that made it that far is so impressive.
Yeah. And there's a lot there to unpack, so we
can So real quick aside, give people a slight peek behind the curtain, because I have a few shout outs I want to throw out there too. Or if you had more, Scott, I can hand it back to you. Scott and I and a couple of the guys from Vector Sigma, we got together the other day to say, okay, we want to produce a bunch of content regarding the Energon Invitational. How do we break it up? What topics are we going to cover? How are we going to do this? And Scott had asked me, well, how many tech talks do you think we can do covering the Energon Invitational? And I was only like 25% joking when I said we could probably drag this out till like May, because there's just so many different facets that I think are interesting, whether it's actual in-depth meta-analysis or the meta-analysis of the event, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Not like from a deck versus deck standpoint, but like all the different facets of the event, or it's just the logistics of the event, or it's this about the event or that about the event. And like, a lot of these sentences are going to become very much run-ons as I'm going through, so I apologize in advance.
Well, I think I mean, outside of, so if we put Origins aside because it was basically announced 2 weeks before it actually happened, and if we include Gen Con, this is really only the second event where anything we've talked about pre-event could actually be analyzed as to how correct or incorrect our assumptions going into it were. So if we're sitting here holding ourselves out as experts in tournament advice saying, like, you know, you should be prepared for X, and then, like, we do or don't see X, like, that's a whole show in of itself. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah, there's so many details that you can pull apart, just any level of analysis, and we can really dive into it. So expect us to talk about the EI for a while. We're going to try and make it as coherent as possible, but especially in this initial one, it's very much at least for me, going to be kind of a brain dump of all the things that were awesome about it. So to that end, Scott, were there any other shout outs that you wanted to get in before I threw some out there?
Again, like, most of them involve players and, like, the team and things like that, but we'll get into that as we
oh yeah. So aside from those, and obviously, like Scott said, to Pastimes and WotC, I wanted to give a quick shout out to all the different people that had come up to me throughout the weekend, because apparently I have a very recognizable voice. I don't know if people care about the mug now that I joked to people, nobody cared about me until I took off the mask. But I know a few people had come up, well, more than a few people had come up to you, Scott, independently, as well as in addition to other members of our team, just to say that they appreciated what we do. A couple people actually asked for my autograph. So shout out to Joel, because he was the very first. So shout out, man. I joked with him afterwards because he came to hang out with us, which we'll get into this later after the event. We all went out to at happy hour that Scott was inviting everybody to. And I told him when he first came up to me and said that, I thought he was messing with me. Like, I thought it was a prank, because clearly, other than paying for a bill, nobody's ever asked for my signature for anything before. So it was very much, like I said earlier, a surreal experience in a very positive way. It was really cool. And I think everybody that came up to me, and if I didn't, and you're listening to this, here you go. It is very much appreciated when people come up. So a big thank you to everybody that had kind words for us. It was amazing. And it is also important because, as I told a few people, I can see the numbers on the podcast downloads. I can see the likes and dislikes or whatever on the YouTube videos, but it's very different when a human being comes up to you to shake your hand, to say, hey, I think you're doing a good job, or, you know, keep up the good work, or whatever, or just to say, hi, I listen to you all the time. Or even if somebody came up to me and told me, no, you suck, but at least they're saying it to my face. So it was definitely awesome. So shout out to all those people that were there.
Yeah, I agree.
All those words. Yep. Thumbs up.
Well, you said it better than I probably could. So.
Well, I know. And like I said, I know a bunch of people had come up to you, Scott, as well, for basically the same purpose. It was really cool. We didn't start doing this for the fame, but it was really cool to meet people. There were other people that I did the same thing to. Like, I went up to them because I knew who they were and introduced myself. It's cool, as always, to talk to the WotC team. I got Matt Smith to sign my blaster, which was part of the highlight of the weekend. That was really cool for me. And there's a bunch of other stuff that we'll get into as we dive in, but I wanted to call those out after giving Dan the quick shout out for the taking home the W.
Yeah, I guess the one overall thing I'll say is that the thing I really appreciate is what people don't I guess really don't understand. It's been a little bit over a year now, and I've played card games for 25 years, and there's been no year in card games, and this includes, like, World of Warcraft and writing for them and working with them and things like that, like, which is probably the game I've done the most work with, that has been more exciting and more rewarding than this year overall.
Right.
Both from a team standpoint, individual accomplishments, but basically just, like, standing within the community and interacting with the community and helping people improve. So I appreciate
that for this year as well. But we'll probably just do a whole show on that, I assume, at some point. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I said, we got a few on the in store. So going forward, definitely, if you see any of us at any event, by all means, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but at least for me, feel free to come up to me. I'll probably be running my mouth like I do on this show, so feel free to interrupt me. And I'm always willing to say hi to people and talk to everybody if you have feedback or anything like that. It was really cool.
Yep.
So I guess that kind of segues, and I'm sure we'll loop back because, like I said, this is very much going to be a meandering, roaming, interweaved discussion about the event as a whole. But let me kick it to you, Scott, because you had mentioned offline that you kind of want to talk about the lead up to the event and what the preparation was, what we did beforehand, all that kind of stuff. So let me hand the baton off to you.
Yeah, so I remember you, me, and Dan all met at a store in Westchester, which we usually just meet at just because it's convenient and there's a lot of tables there on a Sunday. And I had printed out a bunch.
And there's a Dairy Queen.
And there's a Dairy Queen. and a good Mexican restaurant. I think this is the day.
That place is really good. Like I used to live out in that area, and I'd always drive past it. And I'm glad we went there because that place is really good. But anyway, not to sidetrack.
I think this is the day we actually went there.
Yeah.
And I printed out a bunch of color printouts for Siege 2, and it wound up, in the end, it wound up being a complete waste of time because even though I said like we should start playtesting cards as they come out. Mm-hmm. Cards like Javelin and Sabotage Armaments came out on the last day that spoilers were released.
They kind of threw a wrench in the plan.
Yeah,
just a little bit.
A little bit. So like Spinster decks were out the window and things like that. So
I was really up on spin. I was like, man, I'm gonna make a Spinister deck, and it's like, no, no, you're not.
So in the end, like a lot of that pre-prep like didn't matter. But what I will say is like, this was probably the most intense testing month for any event I've had, and to be honest with you, it really wasn't even that much live testing or that much online testing or anything like that, because I think the big thing for me was the roller coaster ride of the month. So I mean, I think you could tell through the podcast, but basically we had ideas in the beginning and some of them stuck and some of them didn't. Some of them stuck a really long time. But the whole specter of the preparation was really, there was a shadow looming over us of whatever the phrase is.
I was trying to think of a quick Lord of the Rings reference, but yes. I couldn't get it fast enough.
Right. So the shadow looming over us was the Daring Escape deck and the combo decks in general. And,
yes.
And even though they were still existing in some way, shape, or form, they were sort of muted by the week before the event.
Yes.
But in terms of a lot of that, the reason I say that we didn't get a lot of live testing in, I think what we were able to do as a team was, I think we reached a point where we can kind of walk through situations and walk through deck construction and things like that as a group and have group conversations, mostly on Discord and things like that, just to make it easier. But in person also, not every testing session was dominated by playing games.
Right.
On logistics and things like that, and we were able to say you work on this deck, you work on that deck. What are you working on? Have active forums, things like that, and have a real team effort, even when we weren't actually grinding games.
Right.
I think that was what was most important. And to be honest with you, I think the other thing that was important was, so we made a conscious effort going into the Energon Invitational that we needed to expand our roster of players. And having worked with a lot of the players from PBG in the past peripherally, it just became very obvious that we should just work with them on a more permanent basis.
Right.
So between George Machado and Andrew Duvall from Miami, we were able to gain new members, and there were others that were after the event that we could talk at a later time. But the fact of the matter just was that we were able to trust results that other players were giving us and take them as fact without really having to put them through the ringer, because essentially there's
not enough time to digest everything. there was just volume of work.
Right. So I would say basically like the big things were what was going on with the Daring Escape, how are we going to adapt to it, were we going to play it, and then the frustration that occurred either, in peripheral ways because of it, but you can go back to our old podcast and listen to them. You can probably tell the frustration.
We had a few things to say about it at various points.
Yeah. There was a lot of real life events going on at the time. There was just a lot going on, but I don't think. But what impresses me the most is that like none of that really seemed to obviously in the end get in the way. So shout out to the team and to everybody involved because I think I'm always going to say we could probably have done more, but I'm not really sure the results would bear that out. So I don't know. There were definitely things I would do differently. But I think as a month leading up to an event where I would argue is probably the second most powerful set of the game of the 4 sets.
I can see that, yeah.
I just think that there was a lot of work that was done. If you look through both the character, especially on the battle deck side of a lot of the decks, you'll definitely see. I would argue there's probably more of an influence on the battle deck side than the characters, but there was a lot of influence on the character side as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I would say, obviously, as usual, the battle deck side is more ubiquitous because it doesn't really matter if the card's good; it's going to be shown up in multiple types of decks.
That's kind of how it works, yeah.
Right. But so but that sometimes takes longer to test because you can usually write off a character or accept a character right away. But the battle deck side can be more difficult, especially when you're adapting existing lists.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there was just a lot of work that went into it, but I think a lot of work. It's not just playing games, is my point. There's a lot of logistical things that had to be figured out, like setting up dinners or setting up Airbnbs, things like that we did.
Well, speaking of that, not to, if you had any more points, I didn't want to cut you off, but moving to there, why don't you explain a little bit about what happened as we get closer to the event? Because, like you said, when we first started out, we started getting spoilers, and we finally had the whole spoiler, and then it was, oh God, there's this looming danger or impending doom in the Daring Escape deck, and then that got resolved, or sort of resolved, because it is legitimately still a thing in different forms. As we got closer to the event, do you want to talk a little bit about like what it was actually being there? Or was there something else in the middle you wanted to cover before we get to like Thursday?
No, I mean, like I said, the one thing I can say, and this again this will definitely be a whole show unto itself, but like, if you can surround yourself with players that are on your level, or at least not necessarily on your level from a, if you consider yourself to be an elite player and they may not be in your level playing wise, but if they're on your level from a caring perspective, that's very important because
you can't coach effort.
Well, I could pick up the phone and call you, or I could pick up the phone and call Dan whenever I wanted. Mm-hmm. And you, obviously, I don't mean the caveat part when it comes to you guys.
Yeah.
But
well, in that case, I get. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
That's not what I mean.
I know.
But like you guys, like people care.
Yeah.
So, like I think that's very important because there is a lot that goes on in your head, and like if you have outlets to be able to discuss that with, even if it's not in like a sitting down and playing games formal session, I think that's very important to get ideas, whether it's in game or out of game, off your chest at various times. I just think that's the most important aspect of playing with other players or having a team, however you want to call it.
Right.
If it's not an official team, it could just be other people because, I just find that to be an important outlet. So,
well, it's important to be able to bounce ideas. Like you said, you can grind a million games, but if it's just you putting the thought in there, clearly it's not going to be as efficient as with other people, as well as you're still only really getting your perspective of things. Like you said, being able to just jump on the phone real quick, hop on our forums, or jump in the Discord, or any of the other 15,000 communication methods we had, that you could just say, hey, what about this idea? I've been trying this, or I'm encountering this particular issue. And like you said, just almost not exactly decision treeing it, but doing the walkthrough and finding the different paths. I know I've done this my entire life, so I annoyed the hell out of Scott and everybody else by asking 15,000 questions just for the sake of like, okay, go through this decision path and figure it out. And then we got there. What does that mean? Do we win? Do we lose? Do we have to change this? Could we have made a decision 3 points up and then that would have given us a different branching path? I'm a question guy, so I have to like get it out there, whiteboard it for me to be able to see it. And that having those other people to bounce it off of, someone else to look at that whiteboard, made a significant difference.
Yes.
Dan's in the chat saying, Scott, at 5:39 a.m., I have an idea. Call me on the way to work.
Right.
He did say pick up the phone whenever, so.
Yeah. I mean, luckily the three of us also have convenient schedules close to each other. So
yeah, exactly. According to Dan, I didn't annoy anybody, especially him. I'm like, okay, if you say so.
Yeah, the written word does not convey emotion.
Yes, that is very true. Excuse me. My wife is busting my chops in there too, in chat. But anyway, so let's get closer to the event and talk about, because you'd mentioned some of the meetups, some of the dinners. So like Thursday, we all hit up, I guess it's your favorite place in the city?
No, I mean, I just like it. I like it when we're going out for large group dinners because it makes things easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we went to Maggiano's with the team, the people that would then that moment join the team officially, and the team level of the patrons that joined the team for that team level tier that we have for all the major events.
Mm-hmm.
We hit up Maggiano's quote on us, so we're happy to give back to the people that were there as like a celebration for all the effort that we had put into the event ahead of time, because the logistics of PAX Unplugged and the event itself just weren't going to work out where any other night was going to be convenient. So, especially to eat a family-style Italian meal. So
yeah, that might have been a challenge. That's a discussion for probably another show, but we'll get there eventually.
So, so due to the nature of the meal, it just made the most sense to do it on the Thursday into Friday, especially for people in early.
Right.
So, yeah, we got together in the city. I drove down, even though like I wasn't staying at home. I live like 40 minutes west of the city. And then you came in. You weren't staying downtown or
yeah,
either.
exactly.
Palmer as well. And then Dan went up staying at the Airbnb, which is only like a couple miles away from, and I say a couple miles, but it's an annoying drive or walk. But
well, to be fair, any drive into the city is going to be annoying, I think.
Yeah.
Like by definition. Is there a city Go ahead.
Very congested area. It happens to be in a very congested area.
Yeah.
Of the city specifically, but my drives in were fine, to be honest with you, each time. But
and yes, chat, you're right. It was carb loading before the marathon.
Yeah,
it worked. Although it was on Thursday, so really it was 2 days in advance. So I don't know if that works out. I'm not a dietitian.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like I thought we were going to discuss more of the actual X's and O's, and we kind of didn't, to be honest with you. So I think that was good.
Yeah, it was just like a fun hangout, which is cool. And to be honest, that was something I'll probably bring up again when we talk about Friday and Saturday, like before the event.
Mm-hmm.
What I always did when I was playing sports and I play other games prior to this was I just try and stay loose, because at a certain point, at least for me, I just have to accept the work that I've done. So it's like either I'm prepared or I'm not. Me playing one more game the morning of, or reading my notes or something one more time. It's like either I've got it or I don't. I'm not going to cram before the event. I'd rather just be loose and relax mentally and physically, especially when we're talking about this length of event with this level of competition.
Yeah, which is unique considering how this wound up, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then we talked about makeup for an extensive period of time on Thursday. I forgot about that.
Yes. I'm a big fan of certain makeup influencers, for those out there.
Yes.
Fun fact that you would not know normally.
You learned today, for those paying attention. Yeah, and the other topics at dinner we'll leave off.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me at least, it was definitely fun hanging out with everybody. We were all kind of just messing around. We were all having fun with people we enjoy hanging out with, and also that we've been putting in a lot of work with. So it was nice to, for lack of a better way to put it, like it was a de-stress before the main event.
Yep.
From there, it was none of us played we all played a little bit on Friday, but it wasn't actually playing like in the LCQs, which to be honest, I intended to do initially. Like I had every intention of walking in and playing in a few LCQs, not explicitly to Dream Crush, but really just for the sake of playing.
Yeah, and this is again probably something we'll get into later, but you know, one of the main attractions that I like about going to a pastimes event or going to really a lot of other organizers do this is like the prize wall and just that whole concept. Like you're not winning any one thing, you're winning like kind of like, I don't know, credit to get different prizes, and I think that whole aspect is cool.
It's I guess essentially store credit, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Which does give it a different feel than like, I mean, you're never going to please everybody. Most people would be like, if it was just win a box or win a few boxes, I don't think anybody would complain, but it is cool that like, oh, well, I don't really need more packs. I'm going to pick up sleeves and a binder or some of the other swag.
Right. If you want like if you play D&D, there's like a D&D book there. You might, like it, you know, or you want to try a different game, like the starter deck of some other game.
Yeah. Or even I was a little surprised, but I think they had that sweet double-sided playmat as part of the prize wall.
Or my pin that I lost that I can't find anywhere. You know?
You lost a pin?
Yeah, I don't know where it is.
Well, you'll probably find it in 10 years with all that other stuff in your bag.
It might be in my bag. You're right.
Yeah.
It might be in my bag. It probably is in my bag.
I mean, I don't know where else you would have put it other than in your bag. Like, that kind of makes sense.
In the bag or in my pocket. I checked all my pockets.
I guess, yeah.
It's probably in the bottom of the bag somewhere.
Okay, so you got the playmat, right?
I bought the playmat ahead of time.
Okay, so is it just me, or does the Decepticon side look significantly sharper, like color-wise, than the Autobot side?
I think that's intentional because of like the effects of the war or something like that on one
side.
Yeah,
it seemed like the Autobot side, especially as Drew was describing it in the interview, which you could always head over there to get his words on it, like rather than me paraphrasing it. But it's supposed to be, you know, the first Siege 1 is loosely Autobot themed, Siege 2 is loosely Decepticon themed, Decepticon surprise win in Siege 2. And it seemed very much grittier on the art on the Autobot side than the Decepticon side, whereas the Decepticon side is like the colors were much sharper. I just liked the art more on top of liking the characters anyway, but
the Autobot side is very Band of Brothers looking to me, and the Decepticon side is very I don't know, Game of Thrones throne room looking to me. So like,
I think that those are both apt descriptions. So
yeah, so I'll probably keep it on the Decepticon side.
Yeah, I really do like the artwork across both. It was they were definitely very cool looking.
Yeah.
So, like I said, none of us, as far as I know, unless I missed something, you know, as I was wandering around the exhibitor hall, I don't think any of us played in the LCQs, but we were keeping tabs on it just to see what was showing up. It seemed like it was wall-to-wall Shockwave, at least in the first one. I'm not sure about the later ones.
Yeah, and again, we did not play in them because we thought they should only be for unqualified players, or because really for any reason other than we had interviews to do, and they were scheduled at times that just didn't make it convenient for us to play in like a minimum 4 to 5 hour event. So
exactly,
you know, that was that. So we interviewed. I mean, I didn't get a chance. I only made it like a couple booths into the actual convention. One suggestion I will make for people is I would come in the night before and get your badge the night before, or else you have to wait in a gigantic line.
Yeah, if you had the
Broad Street.
When we came in on Thursday, it took all of like 30 seconds. There was no one there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can actually get them mailed to you. That's what my wife did. But since
we got ours free, so
exactly, yeah, through the different events, so you had to go collect them.
yeah, or like we had press badges, but it was the same way. Like you couldn't get them sent to you, you had to pick them up. But
Right.
I would highly recommend going in Thursday night, assuming it's the same schedule next year. I think they've already announced it's the 20th to the 22nd of 2020. So I assume it's another 3-day con.
Mm-hmm.
Like go in the night before, and get your badge. I don't even know what time it ran till.
I want to say it was pretty
tonight.
late, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, make the effort to come in early and get your first day really annoying.
Yeah, it's not. It's like we talked about before. It's one of those simple things that like can put you on the bad foot, sort of thing, immediately. So it's easier just to get it out of the way, especially then you don't have to worry about does your travel interfere, blah blah blah.
Yeah. So after we jumped out of the awful line that we didn't actually have to be in, we actually got into the convention center, into the actual area pretty easily, and that was the same way we came in on the street every day. Like I said, just due to the scheduling of the interviews, we basically just sat around and chilled out and met people and chilled out basically all day. And then eventually after we had our interview and after other people that we were eating with had their discussions with Drew, we went to, what was it?
That place across from there.
Yeah, well, it's not Victory. It's not Rock Bottom. It's what's the place called? The brewery place.
I know what you're talking about. I don't remember the name of the place.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
There's one in all. There's
I'm sure we'll think of it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I have Fieldhouse in my head, but it's not Fieldhouse.
Yeah, Fieldhouse is the other place.
Yeah. So we went there, had a good dinner, like real typical bar food, and then basically so we had an early dinner and a lighter dinner than the night before. I don't know if you can have a heavier dinner than the night before.
Yeah.
And so we went back to the card hall and we said, okay, we're going to get in, a few hours of playtesting before we, have to submit our deck list online by midnight.
Right.
And,
yeah, Iron Hill, is that it?
Iron Hill, yeah.
Yeah, Chuck. Yeah. Shout out to Chuck. Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, Iron Hill. So, and, you had to submit your deck list online. So we only had, a certain period of time. And
yeah, so this was like, what, 7:30, 8 o'clock we're getting back to the card hall?
Yeah. And we ran into Top Deck Games, which had a table there, and I guess they were probably running Pokemon events there, I want to say, but they were...
They had two booths, yeah, because they had a separate one out in the middle of the exhibitor hall.
Yeah, well, whatever we went to, I think was like the Pokemon area they were running, and like, is there any events going on? They're like, no. Well, can we play on your tables that you have reserved for whatever? Because they were like, not near anything else, but still within the giant hall. So like we just were able to play basically quote at our local store that was there.
Yeah.
And so Andrew was like, "Look, I want to show you my Galaxy Prime deck." And I said, we were very set on running Jetfire.
Yep.
And I didn't think the results that were being given were. They were correct results, but I needed to see it for myself. And then within 5 games, I just looked over and I said, all right,
call the audible.
I got crushed. I got so head to head, I lost all 5 games as Jetfire. And then I basically said to you, sitting next to me, hand me this deck, hand me that deck, hand me this deck, hand me that deck. And, I said, hand me Blaster. It beat it. And then I said, hand me Shockwave. And then, what was really cool was Andrew said, no, now you run the Galaxy Prime, which, obviously I never ran before, and I'll run the Shockwave.
Yeah.
And you can figure out, without even knowing how it does.
Yeah.
And again, beat it 3 games, and I looked over to you and Dan, I just said, I'm totally comfortable running Jetfire because I think it's strong in this field. There aren't going to be a lot of people, in my opinion, running this deck. If it is a counter to it, I don't really know. Even to this moment, I can explain sort of why it is, but again, we're not going to get into that right now.
Yeah.
But looking at it from a Sphere's perspective, and sorry to keep coming back to this, but it came up many times on the weekend, whether it was with WotC, whether it was with other players and things like that, like whether they need to be modified or not. the concept still holds true. But the fact of the matter is, the Jetfire deck we had been working on and perfecting for the last month to the day, and again, Palmer ran it to a top 32 finish. So
yeah, there's
I'll
a
be
funny
doing
story about that later on.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll leave that one for Palmer, but
Yeah, I'll be doing a deck tag on it as well soon.
okay.
But it was attacking on a very similar axis. It was a very heavy 3-wide control deck with a very large character at the center of it that eventually, does all the work.
Yeah, they take over the game.
And since, the one deck was beating the other, it would just be hypocritical from a Sphere's perspective not to run the deck and not to make that the right choice.
Well, like you said previously, run the best deck in the Sphere if they're attacking on the same axis.
Right, and because I feel like in the moment we had access to it, it would be stupid and hypocritical not to run it. So shout out to Andrew Duvall from what is now Vector Sigma and PBG, and to George Machado for they weren't like, haha, see, we found something better than you at all. Like, it was just like here's what we found, prove us wrong, and when we couldn't, then it just immediately, like, it was like immediate. It was okay, let's figure out a sideboard together.
Exactly.
It was not like here. So it was just like a complete team effort in the end, even though they obviously had the genesis of the deck to begin with. And I will say, and I'm sure Dan will get into this, and I have my own thoughts as well. Like, I think if we had even a couple weeks under our belts with it, there are definitely changes I would have made, having played through 6 rounds with the event and with the deck a bunch.
Right.
But given the time constraints,
and by time constraints, you mean about 3 hours.
Yes. We just sleeved up what was there and went with it. And obviously it was the right choice.
Well, obviously, clearly, like you said, a lot of work on their part went into getting it to that stage. And like you had said earlier, it's very much you trust these individuals, you trust the effort and work that they put in. So at least for me personally, because I actually, and I'll elaborate on this in other mediums later on, because I have a whole bunch of words to write about the event and other things, is that I was the daring escape guy for a while. So like, I put a lot of effort into that, and then the gears shifted very close to the event. So I was, to be honest, I put in as many games as I played a lot of games against Jetfire, but playing as Jetfire, as many as that deck. So the entire time I'm 100% taking everything on faith, and at no point did I feel like there was never a doubt in my mind about what you were saying or what Dan was saying or what those guys were saying. Everybody that was there, and Cameron saying this in chat, it was a very collaborative process and again, it's leveraging and utilizing those teammates that are there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, like we said, there would be more shout outs. So like you said, Scott, shout out to them for definitely getting everything there. Like there was a Herculean effort to make that thing. So
yeah, and again, the main focus of this podcast is not about the decks themselves, but I will say that the main thing that was, I will say the two main things that convinced me were, and this is something, again, we'll get into, and I think this is definitely more prevalent in the Galaxy Prime deck. It may be unique to the Galaxy Prime deck. I'm not positive yet, but just a couple of strategic things. But like, using your hit points as a resource was very prevalent in that deck.
Of course, which sounds weird because that's like a relatively common card game thing. As I'm saying it to you, but like, you already know that. Like, in general, like, that's a common thing, but this does it to an extreme.
Yeah, so like the number of attacks that you normally KO a character is much different when you have a 21 health starting character that can equip 3, can go up to 35. So, there's that aspect of it, as well as, so that really affects the turn sequence. And then the big thing for me was being shown what it also allows you to do is play things like Equipment Enthusiast and Work Overtime, like, as powerful card draw engines that, like, they may
much fairer card draw engines than they might otherwise be.
Yes, but there's a reason for them here. Like, like it's basically, I guess what I can say is, don't take any aspect of a character or any battle card for granted. Like they all should be working together in concert.
Right.
You know, the flip, whether you get it off or not, even if it's just value. Like if you every time you get it during a game, you feel like you do like a fist pump because you're like, well, I only have a 50, maybe a little more, a little less than 50% chance to get it, but when you do, you're cheating for that turn. Like when you attack
amazing.
and you get the free upgrade, you're doing the same thing.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
It basically went from like, yes, I mean there are certain tricks in the deck to make sure you get off one or the other, especially like from the incoming transmission perspective, or in testing a very early version we had been playing Secret Dealings, for example, to get off similar things. You can set it up to where it's going to work out to your advantage. But on the flip side, even if you don't, it's basically just like there's a lot of opportunities where you'll take those 50-50 shots, and over the course of a game, because you have so many hit points, you will eventually get enough free actions and upgrade plays to where it's powerful. That's the point.
It's going to work eventually, right? You do it enough times, it's going to work.
Exactly.
Dan's saying, or you could just, flip checkpoints and
right.
It seems okay.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, but the point is, like, I guess in testing, if it wasn't done early and often enough, the abilities were written off as being too
gimmicky,
cutesy, cutesy or gimmicky, like whatever. But like in reality, that doesn't matter. And I remember back to our original review of the card where I said, focus on the fact that you get three utility slots. Like, yes, that is still the case. The whole point of the deck is that you get 3 utility, but it's what you can do with them and what they do for you that is more powerful than just being able to stick a bunch of stuff on him. It's like, what does it mean once you have a bunch of stuff on him? How do you get that stuff on them easier than like, I'm not going to play new designs, but you have a built-in new designs ability.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll go into it further, and Dan, I'm sure, might have already done a deck tech if by the time this goes live, but that's basically like the only strategy part that I wanted to talk about with the deck. And it was shown to us that night, and luckily, as a team, we were able to adapt very quickly to make it work.
Well, so that is one of the, I guess, cardinal sins, because we've even said that before when we were talking way back, like over the summer, I guess, when we were talking about preparing for an event of trusting yourself, and this deck and testing got you this far. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, I guess, for obviously. Did you want to say anything about that end? I mean, you did say a lot about what entailed and what drove the 11th, almost literally 11th hour audible. But anything else you wanted to add on that front?
We could probably do a whole podcast on itself, but I can tell you that, like,
oh yeah, we definitely. I'm sure we could drag that out to like 90 minutes. But go ahead.
I don't recommend it to everybody. This is not a do. This is a do as I say, not as I do moment, because I've done this before in multiple card games, and so I'm used to it. Unfortunately, like I did in the first World of Warcraft World, where I was literally running around the convention center in San Diego buying commons for $1 to try to build 4 versions of a deck, because one of my testing partners just wasn't playing the deck correctly until it was shown to us by teammates, again, from another city. So that's probably another thing I'll say, is that, like, if you can and you have the ability to, I mean, the internet exists. If you can talk to people in other places that just see things from a different perspective, that'll help you as well. This is now the second major time that I've done this, not counting the fact that a lot of my other teams in other games were purposely made up of people from other cities to avoid this, like, to help the situation in general, knowing that.
Right.
So.
Right.
It's to avoid groupthink at a local level. So. But again, we could probably talk about this for a long time. But
we'll just cursory level for now. But I'm sure we'll dive back into it in future shows. But it's definitely something to keep in mind, and an important facet of the story. I guess the only
other thing I'll say is, this is what makes a team. And again, we will expand on this later. But we all chose to play again, except for Palmer, because he didn't know, and that's our fault. But that's neither here nor there.
Sorry, Palmer. If you're listening to this, I couldn't type it up faster.
He's still top 32.
Yeah, he did. Well, because the other deck was still good.
Right.
Like, but anyway, yeah.
So, including a team level patron, 6 out of 7 of us ran the exact same list, got the cards together. Again, it's the one thing I will say is bring your cards to the event. Like, luggage could be heavy, but it's not that heavy. We're still talking about cardboard objects, so bring like a playset if you can to the event.
You can fit a significant number of battle cards in just a 200 card box, and it's a carry-on.
Right. Again, like I knew it was going to happen. There were a lot of dealers on site, only Pastimes as far as I know, but I didn't walk the dealer hall, so I'm not positive about that.
I saw a lot of people selling packs. I believe Pastimes is the only people only set up selling singles. Can't talk.
I mean, there's a significant singles dealer that lives 40 minutes north of the city. I also might.
Yes.
But that's neither here nor there. We were fortunate enough to, again, have access to our own collections at home, but I would highly recommend that for anybody that comes and travels into the area to bring enough cards if you choose to do change your deck on the fly or play in other events and things like that. So that's one aspect. But the other thing, true team, like we all switched to the same deck. We all ran the same deck, so like we all believed this was not like everybody run their own thoughts as to what how they personally want to approach the situation and come out of it that way. Like I think we try to row in the same direction and trust each other enough that whatever we say, gun to your head. Not literally, but very figuratively.
Yeah, he has to point it out because I don't know. Was anybody actually going to think that was serious?
No, but I guess I mean like as close to that as possible. Like like pin you down. And say,
no, I get you. I knew what you meant, but sorry, I'm laughing at chat also, but we'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
I guess we all like the fact that we were all going to run the same thing regardless.
Right.
So I think that's important. That like whatever the call eventually was, I'm not saying it was any one person individually's. We all chose that and thought it was the right decision, no matter what happened. So I think that's a big part of being a team.
Absolutely, yeah, and it excuse me, like I said earlier, that for me I was very much in that boat of I'm leaning on everybody else and I'm trusting their results and their decisions to help inform my own. And for my own part, it ended up working out okay playing Galaxy Prime. I bombed out a little bit in Sealed, but we'll talk about that later. So I guess that might as well... What was that?
It's like the question that people used to ask when I used to play a lot of Texas Hold'em.
What's that?
And people would say, like, what's your favorite hand? And I'm like, if you don't say aces, you're just not playing the game. Like, there's just no other answer.
Mm.
Like, I don't care how many times you want to go in with Jack 10 offsuit. It's not the right answer to that question, and the question's stupid for even being asked. So
yeah,
it's the same thing here. Like, where you go in with the deck that you feel represents the information you have, it's going best at the event.
Mm.
Period. And like the reason to have these people around you is that you're all putting a collective opinion as to what the metagame is going to look like, and so therefore you're choosing what the best answer is. So you're going in with aces. Like no matter like you should always be going in with your opinion at that event of what it is. And there should be no such thing as, well, that guy over there is running Jack 10 offsuit because that's what he likes to do. Yeah, that's not true. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think that's a very appropriate analogy. I get it. I hope everybody follows because I think that's pretty accurate for going into this.
Again, something we can expand on later. But
oh yeah, again, trying to touch a little bit on everything, and then, like I said, we'll be doing this from now and for the next decade or so. And that is merely a slight exaggeration, folks, because we haven't actually made it to the event, but we will shortly because you're going to hear in the next recording the second half or so of this conversation where we do a cursory dissection of the actual event itself and the other events surrounding it. So, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.